Hello, I'm Emma Smith and I'm a secondary school ELSA for Redbridge Community School in Southampton.
Hello, my name's Mary Curtis. I work full-time for the NHS and I've been volunteering with Simon Says for about 2.5 years.
Hello, I'm Helen McKinnon. I've worked in counties other than this one in child bereavement services for about the last 15 years. So we're going to actually think about some questions that each of us will contribute to, and we hope this will help you in your work with people in your school. The first question is, are children and young people more aware of death as a result of COVID being in the news with social distancing measures and lockdown restrictions?
I think yes, they are very much aware. They're having a lot of impact from school, social media, the news, having to accept bubbles and muster stations very, very quickly, as well as trying to look to the adults and guidance of staff at school for reassurance.
What sort of impact has the current situation had on the young people you've been looking after, Emma?
For one child in particular that I'll talk about is the impact of death and COVID. So he is a teenage boy displaying a lot of anger, a lot of upset, and trying to make sense of what's actually going on and finding ways of coping. And he talks about isolating himself, preparing himself for the next bereavement because it will happen. So we're recognising very high anxiety, anger explosions, also attachment and anxiety, but also looking to find somebody to just reassure him that actually death is part of life and part of a process. And he's trying to find the skills to accept, which is really, really difficult for a teenager, especially now with COVID, with rules and regulations and boundaries and not being able to go here and lockdown, how that's made him feel confined. And then he's come to school and he feels even more locked in because he can't socialise and can't. So he's really using those outbursts to try and gain some control.
Emma, what are you actually doing with him to help him and support him in this process, which must be very difficult for him?
At the moment, I've agreed with his year heads that actually he comes down and I come and meet him. He will often come in late, so I will ask reception to let me know when he's arrived so I can come and greet him, and just really check in. There are small interventions that we've done, but we've dipped in and out of it. We've done some work around grief. We've done some work about the firework model and anger and looking at the explosiveness. But my main task with him is to build like a little pyramid of staff that he can go to. So when he's feeling like that, he doesn't have to tell his story or expect everybody to understand. He has those three key people that are his safety net, that he knows that he can go to, and he can quite comfortably say, I'm really struggling, and we can give him some time in a safe space just to allow him to defuse.
Mary, you've talked about what school can provide in this situation, not having a magic wand and not fixing things. What would you say a school and the school staff generally can provide for children in today's world?
I think it's about providing them with a safe environment where they can be themselves. Yes, they're in a bubble, but they can also be with friends who would understand what they're going through. You're right in that, we can't just, either as volunteers or in Emma's case as an ELSA, you can't just wave a magic wand and make everything better for them. But it could be that in the home environment, they can't even talk about the person, their special person that's died, because of fear of upsetting the rest of the family, and they don't want to cause any more anxiety. So the school provides them with a safe environment where they can just be themselves. If they want to go and talk to an ELSA, they can talk to an ELSA. As Emma said, if you've got this sort of pyramid of staff who know what the situation is and know what's going on, and then the main thing is that they all communicate with each other so that everyone knows what's going on, because the child might open up to one member of staff and then not say that something else to another member of staff. So it's important that the staff also have that communication amongst themselves, so that they're all in the know and know what's going on, so that they can all then fully support that child in the most appropriate way. But it's about giving them a safe space and a safe environment to be themselves and to talk about the grief if it's not possible to do that at home.
We're often asked, when is the right time to talk to a child about the death of a loved one? Should it be child-led and I wait for them to bring it up? And I think we've discussed this together and felt that in this situation, young people can often find it very difficult to be proactive and go and seek out some support. So although we want to be child-led and let them help us to understand what they need, we need to approach them. It need only be a very quiet word said, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad. I'm here if you want to talk to me about it. No pressure, but if you just want a bit of a gap from the day, come down to see me for half an hour, that's fine. Or I can see you in break time. But if you make an offer and then provide an invitation, but keep following it up, because then you might find someone is interested in me. Yes, I think I do want to talk to them. And it opens up the start of a relationship that could be supportive. Emma, would you like to comment on that as an idea?
I think that's very important, is express the support, but also discuss and share the news while you're making that key pyramid. And if it is somebody that is very close within the family, actually reaching out and offering that support and seeking that permission as well from that parent to ensure that obviously everybody is working together. I think it's in schools, it really emphasises how much a sense of belonging is important to that child, especially if a death, whether or not it's natural causes or COVID related, that can often wobble a child and a family unit within the home. So school is a very, very key sense of belonging for the child, and having everybody working on the same page. And like you said, Helen, it's acknowledging what's happened and just offering that branch out as, this is your story, but I do understand and I'm here to support, and please come and seek it when you need it.
How do you talk to children and young people about the death and bereavement? What general principles would you adopt for that? Mary, would you like to start with that?
Absolutely. You have to be open and honest in your communication with them. Sometimes a child, the first experience of bereavement they have will be something like a family pet, and it's important for the child to be able to talk about that, and for people not to belittle that. Oh, it's only a dog or it's only a cat that's died, but that they had a relationship with that pet, and it's important for them to be able to express their grief about it. But it's definitely, honesty and using the right language. We've had examples where, as adults, we talk about the body when somebody has died. And we had a child who got really confused and said, well, where's the head gone? They got really, really upset about that. So, and it's important for those children to be able to explore those feelings with somebody who's going to listen and to understand and be sympathetic to them as well.
Emma, would you like to add anything more about the language, the precision of the language that we use and the directness that we would use with young people?
Yes, definitely. I think everybody, and even as a volunteer and an ELSA in education, that actually as a parent as well, it's very, very difficult to try and find the right language, and often is avoided. What was interesting, and I'd share this quick story, is that actually our cat has recently passed away. And what was interesting is that my son came home and I said to him, did you tell anyone at school about our cat dying? And he straight away went, no. And I said, why is that? And he said, because my friend lost their nan, and I didn't want him to think that I was taking away his feelings. And I said, why? Because of the cat? And he said, yeah, because our cat's died, but his nan's died. And I had to sort of sit with him and say, it's okay to have those conversations and emphasize the support of other friends in times like this. And I was very conscious of the language that I used. I went to say, the cat passed in his sleep, and then straight away, before I said it, thought, my eldest doesn't sleep very well, so that could cause even more anxiety. And I started to use the language, the cat's died. And that, for a parent, as a mum and also a school, is really, really hard to say. Some people find it really easy, but I really, really struggled, even though I do this job. But I think I was teaching him now that actually this is a process of life and death, and it's okay to use that language.
There are two things that come up from that is thinking about the language, is that for younger children too, they need to actually understand what death means in terms of life has stopped, the heart isn't beating, the person isn't breathing, which means it's okay that they go to a funeral and they bury them or they cremate them, because it's not a living body anymore. And sometimes it's helpful to think of the body as the shell in which the person lives. And the shell is left behind, but the actual person isn't there anymore. And we're actually honouring the body, the shell, but not the person who's died. We can still maintain a contact with them through our memories and our love of them. And the other thing is to think about the hierarchy of grief. People are often apologetic, just like your son was, and saying, but it was only a cat for me and it was my friend's nan. Actually, for the individual with loss, that loss is absolute. And I think we're very reluctant to accept losses from something that isn't a very close relation. And I think this is particularly the case for teens. If they have a best friend who's died, one of their really important peer group, that is utterly devastating. And for anyone to say, well, it's just a friend, you should be over it by now, is a real insult to their feelings and their love for that person. Even if it wasn't expressed as love, that clearly is what it was. And missing a friend, I think, is one of the most significant losses a teenager can have. So if there is a death from any cause of a teenager, their support group in school is vital that they are understood and that their loss is properly respected and valued. I thought we'd just finish with some ideas of resources so that those involved with young people can find some ideas to work with.
So one of the resources that I've used with some bereaved children, and this is secondary, is the baubles. So many of you will know that you can put photographs and everything. So this is one that we've made. She lost her grandmother, and in there she's chose different colours, a bit like the memory jars that you can do with sand. But what was interesting is that even though we did this for Christmas, she said, I don't want to put that in the box on the Christmas tree. I'm going to hang it by my mirror in my bedroom and it will always be with me. So although we did this as an activity, actually the child chose to keep it as a memory work, a bit like the sand jars, like I said earlier on, which I thought was really lovely.
And on the website, you'll be able to look at some other ideas of how to make a salt or memory jar, ideas about memory boxes, and different creative ways of helping a child help and develop their memories of the person. So although the death of the person is a very negative black time in their lives, they can actually come to put that in the context of the whole life of the person and have happy smiles and laughter and thoughts about memories of the person rather than always think about the fact they're not there anymore. Some resources that a lot of us have found very helpful are blob resources. Huge variety of these. One is here is feelings, and this one is on anger. These cards really help young people, but children as young as 7 and 8, find the words to discover their feelings and give them a greater emotional literacy and then be aware of what they're doing. A magazine for teenagers that's been produced is called Teen Breathe. It's a bi-monthly magazine that covers lots of issues about mindfulness, self-awareness, well-being. It will cover grief, loss of a friend, lots of difficulties that teenagers have with resources for how to deal with them. And this would be very much on my top of a wish list for Christmas presents or birthday presents for a teenager who wants to actually be involved in their own well-being and building up resilience. If you're involved with young people and might wonder about how to deal with anxiety, this is one of the best workbooks I've come across, which provides you with practical activities that you can do alongside a teenager or young person. So you're not just talking directly one-to-one, but you're talking through something in front of you both, and that can really help facilitate conversation with young people. Similar book here, which is on anger management issues. Anger is a very, very common issue at the moment, generally because of COVID, and especially so in a bereaved young person. And again, this will give you lots of ideas for activities through worksheets, through ideas, creative games, and mindfulness to really support you in individual one-to-one work, if you're lucky enough to be able to do that with a young person. And the last one is called The Grieving Teen. This is a very brief book. It says for teenagers and their friends, but it's for anybody involved in pastoral care for young people. It deals with what they may experience in terms of feelings and what you or they can do about it. So it's very easy to read. Each has a double-page spread on anger, guilt, sadness, depression, eating problems, loss of interest in activities, very practical ideas of what to do. And I've often used this, reading it together with a young person to identify where they are in this and then look at what we can do to help sort out those ideas. Mary, could you give us any thoughts on ideas from yourself?
Absolutely. I mean, the ones that yourself and Emma have talked about are absolutely amazing. Don't forget that you can access the Simon Says website, which is www.simonsays.org.uk. There are lots and lots of resources on there. There are lots of reading lists, which are sort of all age appropriate, so you can go in there and have a look at those as well. One of the things I found really, really good was the blob with the balloon journey. So, and you can do this in activity with children. So it's finding out about what inflates their balloon and almost gets them back to, it's not about moving on, but it's actually working through your grief. So the blob of grief is, your balloon is deflated, it's on the floor because that grief is weighing you down. And then that blob will always be with you on your journey. So gradually your balloon starts to inflate, and then the blob of grief is in the basket with you as your balloon then sails through life again. So it's not that you leave that blob behind you, it's always with you and will carry it with you, but you learn to embrace it and take it with you and learn from it in a way. So you can talk to the children about what inflates their balloon, about what they can do to move forward with their lives after the bereavement of somebody special to them.
Emma, have you any other ideas that you'd suggest of means and resources that you use?
Yeah, so there are a couple of resources that we do use. We've used the anxiety gremlin and the anger gremlin, but also there are some really good workbooks out there. So different workbooks that I've used the anger workbook for teens. And this is really good. I don't follow it from page to page. I actually go through and pick out bits and pieces that I think may help that child within that session when we're talking about bereavement. Another one is Stopping the Pain. So this is around cutting and self-harm. Obviously, we do see this as a result of bereavement and an unhealthy coping strategy, but it helps focus on positive ways to deal with stress. So that's the other one. They do a range of workbooks. Another one is the body image for teens. So again, we look at some of these with a lot of young girls, but also some young boys that are trying to find that self-control back. And again, like the other ones, I'll pick bits and pieces out that I think might be relevant to the session, or actually sometimes just give them a break. And then we've got Drawing Together to develop self-control. So this is very handy to use. It has bits and pieces of art in there where we can talk about how you're feeling, where you're feeling it in your body with colouring. So it's good for primary, but it's also very good for secondary.
I'd just like to add the use of music, particularly for working with teenagers. I trained as a music therapist and used the music a lot with young people in bereavement context. And to hear what they're listening to hear their playlist, to share the playlist with them is quite an honour, and it's helped me introduce me to lots of different groups of music. But so many songs are about love or loss, and those can apply to the bereavement situation. And if you actually look at a song and then get the lyrics up and think about the lyrics, very often teenagers say, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say. And they will have found the songs that mean something to them. An example was a young boy who told me about a song by Muse called Absolution. And when we looked at the songs, it absolutely spoke to him about finding his dad who died of a heart attack. He tried to resuscitate him and couldn't. He didn't know what the word absolution meant. But when I said it means forgiveness for something you may have done and didn't want to do or couldn't have done. And he said, yeah, that's exactly it. I've always felt I should actually have done something more for my dad. And there's a bit in it too about tiptoeing through the door. And he used to do that to see if his mum was still alive. So the song was a real breakthrough by looking at the music that he liked, looking at the lyrics and using that as the way to actually explore them emotionally. And also teenagers might like to really bash drums furiously, or if they're playing really loud, aggressive music, a lot of which is like Muse or heavy metal or whatever they're listening to, it'll give you a window into what they're feeling. And it's a lovely thing to share. It could be some music that the person who's died really loved listening to. It could be Top of the Pops from 1990 or something that their grandmother used to listen to. So it's something that connects them with that person, and it's a lovely way of sharing. All you need is their iPhone, Spotify and a Bluetooth speaker, and you've got the world of music at your fingertips. And you can also use it to help with relaxation. So many relaxation pieces of music you can get on Spotify or the equivalent now.